My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt, Video 10, the Santa Myth, Part 4. So I've read 3 different sections of the Santa Myth in earlier videos. So this is Part 4. Here's the cover of the novella, John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt, a novella by John Passfield. Here's a summary from the back cover. A writer, John Passfield, is driving home from a December book discussion meeting and thinking about the Christmas topics that were discussed. In particular, Dickens, who wrote a novella that transformed the world's conception of Christmas. He suddenly finds himself sitting in a sleigh, pulled by Rudolph and 8 tiny reindeer. What an excellent opportunity to ask Santa but a 70-year-old puzzle, the mystery of the missing cowboy shirt. Well, John, the main character in this novella, is fascinated to be riding in a sleigh with a mythical creature. He takes the opportunity to ask Santa not only about this missing cowboy shirt, but about a process whereby a mythical creature is created. So I'll read the sections of the novella that have to do with that process. Let's go to page 55 first. John is speaking. So John and Santa are sitting in the sleigh, riding side by side, going all over the world and chatting about various topics. So John says, "This is quite an opportunity for me, Santa, because, you see, I'm interested in the concept of myth. Myth, it seems to me, is the basis of all literature. And it's the basis of all literature because it's the basic dynamic of life. We human beings take our experience, our own and that of others, of an individual, a group, or a whole society, and turn it into imagery, significant imagery, which we place in patterns of potential meaning. And when the image patterns are interpreted, we have a myth. Now, myths are highly contentious for an individual and for a tribe. So all of life, and therefore all of literature, is the battle of the myths. The Othello myth versus the Desdemona myth versus the Iago myth. The cultural myth. The myth of Santa. The author myth. The myth of Shakespeare, you see? And then there's the myth, the reader comprehension myth that's created in the reader's mind. As these literary images take their place in the folds of the gray matter and have their say. So, Santa, you are a mythical creature, as much as any of the characters from the greatest books of all time. That's why it's a privilege to get to talk with you this way." So Santa, beside him, holding the reins, driving the sleigh, says, "Well, I am a mythical creature, John. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But you realize I know very little about how it's done. Clement Moore wrote the poem about the 8 tiny reindeer in the sleigh. Until he did, I had only myself to get around. And then the fella wrote the song, and there was Rudolph. Johnny Marks from a poem by Robert May. But even if I had thought of Rudolph, John, I couldn't have altered the myth. I am a myth. You are a human. Humans make myths. Myths are made. I am as malleable as clay, John. You are the potter, and I am the vase. I am the work of art, and you are the artisan." And they ride along, and a few other things are mentioned in John's mind. And then Santa continues, "But suppose you make me the Christmas bunny, or give me a dog cart pulled by mice, or have me ride through the air on a sleigh with a team of 8 tiny unicorns, or unicorns the size of Percherons. Well, many myths are given birth, John. Many struggle to survive. The rubbish heaps are filled with myths that did not take hold. A myth, to have any force, must be believed. The 8 tiny reindeer, the bright red nose, you'd be hard-pressed now to set these images aside. But if the unicorn story gains traction, John, then that's how I'll get around next Christmas Eve. Myth is a constantly changing container of shaped belief. It is constantly being built up and being torn down. Then we turn a page over, and Santa continues. New elves are being created, John. We need more elves every year. As the population grows, we need more helpers in Santa's workshop. Of course, we don't make a toy for every child, as you can imagine. We're supernatural, but not God-powered, But we do need seeds to enable the toys to grow. The loaves and fishes story, you realize, started with actual loaves and actual fishes. But there's something even I don't understand, John. Elves are created. They are wonderful. They don't die. Fine. But some are created as teenagers. And some are created as middle-aged elves. And some are created even older than you or I. I don't know whether it's actually occurred to you, John, but sometimes one of those Santas in those malls is actually me. Oh, I know people joke about pulling Santa's beard, and occasionally a mischievous boy will do so, and it can be rather painful when it happens. But, of course, the presence of a real beard is an incontrovertible proof that the person with the real beard is actually me. Take a close look, though, at some of those old pictures that you have in your drawer or in your computer file. Perhaps this is the lap that you, or perhaps your sons, were sitting on when you were all just boys. But I shouldn't be surprised that an elf can never have a childhood, John, as neither did I. I was created, not born at all. No mother, no father, no childhood or youth. I was created at the age that I seem to be now. Well, it's not to be regretted. I accept my lot in life. I think about it only when I spend time with someone like you. So that's the fourth part of Santa's explanation of himself as a mythical creature. He never had a childhood. He was never born. He was never a baby or a boy or a youth, and he never had any parents. Well, he says it doesn't bother him. He says he doesn't think about it, except when he's with a person like John, who has had a childhood and has had a family, a couple of families. So who knows what Santa really thinks. So Santa explains his theory of myth to, John explains his theory of myth to Santa, and Santa in turn explains to John that he knows that he's a mythical creature, and then he goes on to explain how the myth of Santa has been created. It's interesting that the myth of Santa breaks down into two parts. One is the story of how Santa was created as an essence, a spiritual force in the life of the world and in the minds of human beings, and the other is the physical embodiment of that spiritual force. What we think of when we think of Santa. The workshop at the North Pole, the sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer, the reindeer with the red nose, whom we know as Rudolph, who came to rescue Santa in his sleigh one foggy night. So we have then the modern embodiment of the ancient timeless force that Santa represents, the current Santa myth. And we have the force itself, the one that Santa claims goes right back to the beginning of the world. The Santa myth, Santa explains, is a combination of these two elements. The spiritual element, the force element that was created at the beginning of the world by a superior power, and the physical element, shall we say, the sleigh and reindeer element that was created increment by human storytellers, writers of poems and songs who created the physical Santa we know and made adjustments to his milieu by adding various elements such as Rudolph. It's interesting that Santa says that he himself has no power to alter the myth of himself. The force that he represents was created by a higher power, and the popular embodiment of the force that he represents was created by humans who live on the earth. And so Santa claims that's all he knows. Well, we ask what's bothering Santa. He doesn't explain that. We ask about the creation of Santa as a mythical creature. He tells as much as he says he knows. So if he knows more, he's not saying. So this, once again, is my novella, John and Santa, the cowboy shirt. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it, more information at my publisher's website, which is Rocks Mills Press. And my website, johnpassfield.ca, has 2 books. You can access them for free. Workbook and a journal, planning notebook and a journal. So have a look at those if you're interested. And lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video.